David is preparing to step into one of the most defining moments of his life. And he's not about to just face Goliath. He is stepping into a role that no one else was willing to accept. In fact, the rest of them are so intimidated, they tried to discourage him from it. But when he met with Saul, he shared the secret of his confidence. What he told him was, I have faced the lion and the bear. And just as God has given me the victory in the past, God will defeat Goliath. He wasn't taking the credit. He had this profound confidence that no matter how big the challenge, how big Goliath, God was giving him the victory. See, those prior battles, those trophies made it that they shifted the idea of God giving the victory from an idea to a confident expectation. He had experienced it before. Sure, Goliath is bigger than the lion and the bear, but the principle is absolutely the same. Which is why you and I need those victories. We need those trophies as a testimony. They are supposed to be a testimony, first for ourselves, and then those around us. And we are expected to have a testimony. But we've kind of reduced the idea of testimony to this vague story of how I was really rotten before, but then I came to Jesus, and now I'm pretty good. And while there's validity to that, is it compelling? Now, Saul/Paul had a very compelling testimony from that standpoint. He was actively trying to kill the believers, met Christ, and now is actively trying to promote the believers. It was compelling evidence. It was undeniable, the change, which is exactly what a testimony is supposed to mean. It literally means evidence. It is supposed to be the compelling evidence. And why those victories need to be that compelling evidence, that testimony in our lives, first for ourselves. We need that track record of God's deliverance. We have got to make this mental shift when the challenges come, that rather being overwhelmed by that wave, to have that profound confidence that God has given us a victory before, and God will give us a victory now. I don't know how, but God will give us that victory. That it's shifting from hope to this confident faith, that we would have that track record, those trophies, those prior victories that we can fall back on. And David had that confidence that has taken me way too long to get to. That when the challenges arrive, how do we have that preset? Yes, God's going to give us the victory. Doesn't mean it's not intimidating, but we really truly believe God will give the victory. In fact, when David met with Goliath, he said something, again, very profound. God will defeat you, and I will kill you. In other words, God's the one giving the victory. I just have to show up and do my part. God gets all the glory. We need those victories. We need that testimony first for ourselves to continue to build our confidence in a life, in a world that's changing. And recognizing that God wants to raise up those that will be an example. That your testimony, that compelling evidence, would inspire those around us. That how many have either been beaten down by life or just accepted second best. They've become complacent. And God is truly wanting to inspire people to trust Him for more. It doesn't mean it'll always work the way we expect, but it does mean that God is always faithful. And that should be our testimony, that it is the testimony of God's faithfulness, regardless of the situation. But there's one even more. And we are told that we comfort others with the same comfort that we receive. And again, we kind of can get that impression that comforting others is, it's going to be okay. It's just a word of encouragement, a hug, whatever. But interestingly, comfort is the same idea. It's a different word than testimony, but it's the same idea. It's the idea of giving evidence in court. Again, the idea of compelling evidence. How do we comfort others with the compelling evidence of God's faithfulness, the compelling evidence of what God has done in our lives, the compelling evidence of what we've seen him do in others, the compelling evidence of God's love, his grace, his mercy, his faithfulness, his power at work on our behalf. Making that continual progression of moving God from an idea that people believe in to a living reality in their lives. The trophies in my life and in your life are expected. They're supposed to be that compelling evidence. They are supposed to be the testimony of God's goodness, his faithfulness, his mercy, his love, his grace, and so on. The challenges we face are building blocks, not just for our confidence, but for a confident expectation in others. And the challenges will come. The question becomes how we face them. Do we face them with just a weak hope that God will move on our behalf? Or do we make this mental shift to where we face the challenges with, again, this confident expectation that God will give the victory? I just have to show up and do my part. On a final thought, it's a reminder that when we don't reflect on those trophies, when we don't reflect on that testimony of what God has done, not what we accomplished, but what God has done, they begin to shrink. They begin to fade into insignificance. And when the challenge arises, they don't have quite that same power and strength to spur us to greater confidence. One of the things that the Israelites did was they had memorial stones, so that when their kids would say, "Hey, Dad, why is that there?" Let me tell you what God did. What are the testimonies? What are the memorial stones in your life where you can brag on God? Let me tell you what God did and why this inspires my confidence.